Okay, so I'm going to start. We just have people doing basically brief eulogies. And so I'd like to share with you, for my eulogy, 3 stories. And they're called the blog, the blockbuster, and the book. So 3 B stories to provide a glimpse of my dad and his ideas. So my dad was always very curious. He would hunt for snakes and spiders in the woods at a young age, and he knew all about the different species. He read voraciously in high school and college with an emphasis on history and philosophy. When he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, however, he developed this kind of entire world in his mind and this life philosophy that was based on his readings and his experience. And he really believed in this philosophy, and he would talk about it often. He would implement it in his daily life. And this philosophy was kind of a mix of ideas. He loved the ancient philosophers like Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius, some more modern people, John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, Ernest Hemingway, Ayn Rand, to name a few. He really believed in the scientific method and the pursuit of knowledge. He was very curious. He was kind of a stoic in some sense, as I'm sure we'll kind of get into later. He believed in free will and self-reliance. So, working hard and relying on your own, efforts. He believed in grit and determination and in the goodness of people. He made a conscious effort to instill these ideas in Jackie and me. And so these 3 stories are hopefully meant to highlight some of kind of those basic ideas, that philosophy, and how he lived and implemented those ideas. So the first story is the blog. This is the story of my dad's curiosity and his pursuit of knowledge. For years, my dad belonged to a blog and philosophy forum hosted by a professor named Harry Binswanger. Binswanger is an objectivist, which means that he loves 3 people: Ayn Rand, Aristotle, and himself. And there are mixed feelings about objectivism and Ayn Rand and maybe Aristotle, but my dad mostly just loved to read philosophy, and he loved to challenge people when he disagreed with their ideas. So he would sit in his office and read through the different posts. He would take part in the discussions on this blog, and then he would really think about the ideas. He would sit down and he would kind of contemplate and sort of, mull over these ideas. So throughout the years, he sent me emails with little blurbs from these blog posts and from other essays that he had read. And he did this in part because he was curious about my opinion, but mostly he did it so that I would think for myself. And so hopefully you'll see that. I saved all of these emails, and I want to give you a sense of what my dad liked to think about and how he made sure to always engage me. So I'm going to read, basically some quotes from these emails. So from November 18, 2015, Byron, what do you think of this statement? Quote, contrary to a gas being an assemblage of molecules, consciousness is not an assemblage of neurons or of anything else. A lot of little brain processes always will just add up to bigger brain processes, end quote. This is pretty heady stuff that my dad was thinking about. The nature of consciousness, how we think and know that we were thinking. So here's another one. January 17, 2016. Byron, this is a good essay. Read it, summarize it, and report back on the central themes. As you can see, he was still giving me homework 5 years after I had graduated from college. So the essay linked in the email is by David McCullough, the historian and writer. You might have heard of him. And here's a quote from that essay. Quote, a fundamental truth about history is that nothing ever had to happen the way it happened. History could have gone off in any number of different directions at any point along the way. Just as your own life can. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Actions have consequences. These all sound self-evident, but they're not self-evident, and they're particularly not to a young person who's trying to understand life, end quote. Another email from March 27, 2017. Byron, what do you think of Professor Binswanger's answer to my question? My dad's question to the professor was, quote, does the optic nerve go directly to the brain's visual centers, or does the information pass through other brain structures first? How much information is lost during transmission? end quote. And I'll spare you the details of our answers. So one more email from February 1st, 2019. Byron, what do you know about time? Isn't time something you neuroscience folks are trying to figure out in terms of how the brain accounts for it? Why is time so important to modern humans? Has it always been so? How does the feeling of a persistent I relate to the fact that everything else is always changing? And so as you can see, my dad had boundless curiosity, and he really wanted to share that with me and my sister. So the second story, the blockbuster. This is the story of my dad's sense of humor, but also of that idea of self-reliance and independence. When I was as young as 7, my dad would wait in the car while I ran inside to buy groceries or pick up engineering papers from the printer. And these were always acts of generosity and patience, which he did to develop that independent spirit within me. And I was just sort of thinking about this. It's so easy to go into the grocery store yourself if you're an adult, because you're in a hurry and you need to get the things and you need to get home. But he almost always would do stuff like that. He would let me do it because he wanted me to kind of develop that, my own independence. And so I thought that was always that's an impressive act of patience and generosity. So on one particular occasion at age 11, I found myself walking through a Blockbuster. This time I was not renting a movie, however. I was on a spy mission, watching a chaotic scene unfold that my dad had orchestrated from his van. In hindsight, this is a very bad idea, as you'll soon learn. While driving past the Blockbuster and a Papa John's pizza, my dad had decided to order 2 large pizzas for delivery, not for himself, but for the Blockbuster. This was a prank phone call on a level I had never imagined, and would never have imagined were it not for my dad. So he ordered the pizzas, and we waited patiently for them to be prepared and delivered. After about 20 minutes, we saw the pizza guy walking down the strip towards the Blockbuster, and I casually walked inside and pretended to peruse the movie selection while the pizza guy asked who had ordered the pizzas. The Blockbuster employees were utterly confused, and they spent several minutes debating who had ordered them, why. They were coming up with ideas. Maybe the manager wanted to surprise us for lunch, one of them suggested. And so I watched in pure joy and delight at the genius of this master prank. We went home, and I could not wait to tell my mom all about it. And as you can imagine, telling my mom was also a very bad idea. She berated my dad about his lack of judgment, the poor example he had set for me, the waste of pizza resources. So, of course, moms are right, because a few weeks later, several students from Willow Springs Elementary School received surprise Papa John's delivery orders. My friend Nick and I had decided to follow my dad's example and order a few pizzas for our friends. And then in retaliation, our friends ordered Chinese and pizza on back-to-back nights to Nick's house. The first night, Nick's mom, Lori Basiliga, told the Chinese delivery guy that she had not ordered any food, and as far as I know, he left without much of a fuss. She had no clue what had been going on. But then the second night, when 4 large pizzas arrived on her doorstep, she immediately knew that something was up, and she yelled at us, Nick and Byron, and I think I was there that night by chance. Nick and Byron, get up here right now. And then she forced us to confess our sins, and then immediately apparently called my dad. And I didn't know about this part until recently, but apparently she called my dad, and he just started dying of laughter. Because he thought it was hilarious. He told her that, oh yeah, I think I know where they got the idea from. and Lori Basiliga was pretty upset because she wanted to scold, you gotta get mad at them, what do you? But he just thought it was funny. So my dad had a great sense of humor. And that was the second story. So the third story is called The Book. And this is the story of grit and determination. Throughout the years, my dad and I went on an annual fishing trip with a guide named Neil Renouf. We traveled to Covington, Virginia to fish on a lake called Lake Muma, and to Richmond for the James River, and down to Norfolk to the Chesapeake Bay. Neil was always very gracious to accommodate us, and my dad was amazingly resilient to get out on the water in his wheelchair. So as you can, we would literally, Neil and I would pick my dad up, and in his wheelchair, he's still in the wheelchair, and just pick up the whole wheelchair and just dump him in the boat. And then when we went to the Chesapeake Bay, there's big waves, and so he's just rocking around, and he was a trooper. It was amazing. But he really wanted me to get out there and go fishing and stuff. So the trip we took in 7th grade was particularly memorable due to a last-minute project that I had procrastinated. A book report was due on Monday after our weekend trip. On Friday, I had not even found a book. So I frantically was looking around. I stumbled upon The Sea Wolf by Jack London on my dad's bookshelf, and my mom ran to several bookstores and found the book on tape. So both 4-hour rides down to Covington, Virginia, and back to Fairfax, my dad and I listened to the book, and he would regularly pause the tape and ask me what a word meant, or he would probe my understanding in some way. So he would pause it and say, "Hey, tell me, what'd you think of this?" Just to see if I was getting it. And so The Sea Wolf is about grit, passion for a goal, and perseverance to achieve that goal. It's about survival. It's the tale of a writer named Humphrey Van Weyden who gets trapped on a fur seal vessel in the Pacific Ocean with a vicious man named Wolf Larsen. Captain Larsen is a self-taught Darwinian, and he warps the biological theory into a kind of sick morality. Quote, "I hold that life is a ferment, a yeasty something which devours other lives such that it might survive. And good living is merely successful piggishness," end quote. So Humphrey endures a callous struggle for survival aboard the ship that's stoked by this crazy captain. And 7th grade me was having some trouble understanding these ideas and relating to them. As a young boy, your life experience is limited. My dad, however, seemed to understand Humphrey on a deep level. He related to me stories from his oil rig days when he worked under people who reminded him of Wolf Larsen. He told me about horrific injuries on the drilling rigs that would go untreated. And this was the 70s, so very different from today. We're much more empathetic with our oil rig workers. He told me about his mom, who constantly berated and belittled him. She would call him gutless, stupid, worthless, a gutter snipe. He told me about fights that he had had throughout his life. And so, I'm listening to these stories, and it's extremely memorable to me. And that was a big moment in my life. It kind of changed things for me because I really didn't like to read before that. And I kind of gained an appreciation for hearing stories and the imagination. I started reading much more after that. I actually wrote college essays about that. And then that was kind of the first time that my dad had told me about some of those more difficult parts of his life. And so it was, I really appreciated kind of his fortitude and his wisdom. And so after that, I saw him continue to persevere. He kept his business thriving, and a lot of his colleagues are here. Thank you for coming. And, he kept his marriage going well with my mom. He was always so great to me and my sister. And, he really had a lot to deal with. He had my sister's disease. He wasn't able to walk. He wasn't able to fish. Difficulty doing the simple tasks, just brushing your teeth. Getting out of bed in the morning. It took him an hour or more to get out of bed. And then, this sense of helplessness when he was in his wheelchair. Like when we pick him up in that boat, he's just sitting there kind of scared. And then he had that, that fear of an early death, that sense of angst that he wasn't going to get to, kind of live out his life. He did make it pretty far though, so. So yeah, I think that story, my dad had a lot of grit and determination, and that's it. Thanks for listening.
I honestly had known this day would come, but I thought we would get at least one more holiday with him. At random moments in time, the thought I will never get to have another conversation with my dad will flood my mind. It's one thing I wish I could have gotten to do so badly. I find myself still talking about him as if he's with us here today. As many of you know, I was born with a chronic illness, cystic fibrosis. My dad and I shared a very special bond because of this. We both had chronic illnesses and understood each other on a deeper level because of it. We shared a morbid sense of humor that helped get us through all the crap that life was showing us, that life was throwing us, that others wouldn't understand. I grew up watching my dad face his own challenges head on. He worked and he worked hard. He became a successful business owner and continued to enjoy fishing and hunting, adapting as needed until his body would absolutely not allow him to do these things anymore. And when he couldn't, he found new hobbies that he loved, like reading blogs, writing on blogs, and reading philosophy. He didn't wallow in the fact that he couldn't do what he had loved so much anymore. He adapted. I admired him so much for that. My dad taught me not to think, why me, but rather, why not me? None of us are special enough that life spares us from difficult circumstances. His life lessons like this one and reminder of his work ethic and success will stay with me forever. My dad was one of my biggest cheerleaders through everything I've gone through over the last few years in my entire life. After my hip replacement last year, he got me up and moving. I would walk and he would wheel down the driveway next to me. He would say, "We're going up the driveway once today, and tomorrow we're doing it twice, then the next day we're doing it 3 times. When I was allowed to ride my bike again, he would come with me to Bull Run and sit in the sun. He absolutely loved to sit in the sun. Any chance he got, he was outside in our driveway taking in some vitamin D. He would have Mo shave his beard in the driveway and have Jocelyn give him physical therapy. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I felt bad for them when it was hot out, but they did it because my dad loved it. As many of you know, my dad was a lover of politics and philosophy. When I was growing up and in the hospital, he would bring me stacks of books to read. I didn't read a single one, and would think he was crazy for wanting me to read a book like The Bastiat. In the past few years, I have developed an interest in politics, and he was my go-to whenever I had questions. But what I love most about our talks was that he always asked what I thought first and wanted me to critically think and do research of my own, form my own opinions. He was a free thinker and wanted me and my brother to be the same. He always would remind me that I need an understanding of the basics and philosophy behind it all before I could truly understand. I find the books he gave me many years ago interesting today. My dad never told me what to believe, but gave me a lot to think about and process. He was such a good thinker, and it rubbed off on me and my brother. I will miss our talks and sharing funny political memes and videos with him so much. In 2016, I dragged both of my parents to Ben Carson's rally. I was interested in the healthcare topics. The line was extremely long, and we were worried we wouldn't get a seat, so we asked if there was a handicap section. They took us to the very front of the line, and my dad was pissed. He never wanted special treatment because of his handicap. He almost left on principle, but my mom talked him into staying. My dad was a man who happened to be in a wheelchair. He was not a wheelchair-bound man. That is always how he wanted to be treated. He never wanted to have to park in the handicap spot and would often say he would much rather park at the very end of the parking lot if it meant he could get up and walk himself into the store. Park as far away as possible and walk if you're able to walk, he would say. Another life lesson of his that I have been reminded of often these days. My dad loved watching movies. We used to go to the theater often, but when things started getting more difficult for him, we would watch at home. Our favorite genre was action. He would always ask me what I wanted to watch first, and I would say some chick flick. He would give me a look like, I am not watching that. I would change to a movie I knew he also would enjoy. We never had to do anything crazy to enjoy each other's company. Watching a movie or even a trip to Costco with a treat of $1.50 hot dog and soda after was special bonding time. My dad was also the kindest person. Despite everything he was going through, he often put others before himself. He always wanted to make sure everyone else was taken care of and would sometimes put his own needs aside. He treated his family, friends, and clients with such respect. Many of his business associates became his great friends because of his easy-to-get-along-with demeanor and great sense of humor. He had friends from all walks of life that I always enjoyed getting to know. One of my favorite stories is when my dad was in D.C. He went up to a homeless man who was asking for money, and the guy told my dad he should try it. "You do real good in that chair." Dad told him he should invest in a wheelchair himself to bring in more money, but the homeless man replied, "Oh no, that would not be honest to my customers." My dad didn't offer him money, but he did offer him a job. That is who he was. He wanted the best for everyone and wanted everyone to see that hard work was the key to success in life. My dad was an amazing guy, but there is one trait I absolutely did not inherit from him. He was late to everything, always having to finish up a project in the office, and I think sometimes he forgot it took him an extra 10 minutes to get into the car because of his handicap. I did, however, get my sophisticated taste buds, as I say, from my dad. We were a big food family. Growing up, we ate dinner as a family nearly every night. That was important to him. And one thing I will continue to do when I have a family of my own. When I think back to dinners as a child, I remember a lot of steak. My dad was a big lover of meat. We would often take trips to Wegmans or Costco and pick out fresh steak or fish to grill. I will miss those trips to the grocery store where he would tell me to slow it down because I was throwing too much into the cart. I will miss him directing me on which spices to add to the food and how to cook it once we got home. Although he couldn't stand up to cook himself, he still enjoyed it in other ways. When my dad wasn't able to drive anymore, I would sometimes take him to job sites or to run errands. After, we would often go out to grab a bite to eat. Speaking of driving him around, I will miss him telling me I was the best driver in the family. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Byron. I remember one time we went to get Indian food at a place in Fairfax City after a few errands. He needed a lot of help eating at this point. I positioned his hands and helped him get readjusted when he needed. The waitress noticed, and at the end of the meal, the restaurant brought us a free dessert. But this wasn't something special I had to do that I deserved an award for. It was life. We thanked them, laughed a little bit about it, and enjoyed that free dessert. I often thought of the day I got married and how I would adapt things so that my dad could wheel me down the aisle, or share a first dance with him. These are things that will no longer happen. I will miss my dad's mischievous smile and his witty sense of humor. All of our good times together, even when things got hard. I will miss his many life lessons and the way he cheered me on through my own hardships. 3 years ago, when I was struggling through my transplant, he sent me a text that meant so much to me, I saved it. When he was sick, a couple weeks before he passed away, I sent the same message back and changed a few things. It read, "Plus, you have a whole different perspective on life. Muscular dystrophy has probably caused you to pull every last bit of living out of your life. That is why your friends love you. You grab the gusto. In a way, you are given a gift of life. I think many people go through life half asleep. They just exist from day to day. You've had a lot of fun. I have seen it. When you value life, as I know you do, you keep going to preserve your life. No matter the odds, you keep moving forward, and you don't give up trying until the last breath leaves your body. My dad enjoyed his life. He had a gift in life, and he lived fully awake. He had fun, and he valued life so much. He never stopped fighting until the last breath left his body. I already miss him so much and know the pain will never go away. I'll just learn to live without him. I'm so very glad he got to witness me survive my transplant, and he knew that I was independent and my health was positive. I promise to continue to make him proud and fight until that last breath leaves my body, just as he did. Thank you."
Byron used to call me his favorite wife. I said, "Honey, I'm your only wife." It's going to be hard for me. I'm going to really stick closely to reading what I've written out, and I've put a lot of thought into it. But I want to start by thanking Brick Wall Printing for the program. Byron never called Harry about printing without some bantering back and forth that brightened the day. And that could have been hundreds of times, really. So thank you to Brick Wall Printing. Let's see if I can do this. I loved being married to Byron. 32 years. I never minded his muscle disease. We contended with it together. He was diagnosed on our first anniversary. Dinner at La Canard that evening wasn't what it was supposed to be. But then the medical community determined that his disease was slow progressing, and as opposed to dying, he would live with the disease, and that was news that we could take. Our children had a wonderful father that they knew very well, and my husband was so important to me all through the years. We knew that we were going to manage together what would come, and we did. So Byron and I met at church, and we were visitors at the time. We saw each other across the parking lot one Sunday, and both came back the following Sunday to find each other. We went to lunch that day, and we stayed all the way till dinner time. I'll never forget how happy I was that day. I always say that boyfriends are fun, and Byron was always my boyfriend as well as my husband. When we were first dating, knowing when my school got out, as I was a teacher, Byron managed driving directly beside me along the road. I finally glanced over, and there was Byron making wide-eyed faces at me just for fun. That guy could keep me laughing. So we got married within 6 months because early on we both knew. And I'm not saying it was an easy marriage. We had our share of backroom brawls. It was a hard marriage, but we believed that hard didn't mean you don't do it. We shared that same fresh sense of humor and raised our children in a gentle and somewhat hands-off way. Byron believed that beings should live the full essence of who they are, and we allowed our children to become who they were. Byron and I both believed in a very deep respect for each individual, and in that way we together had friends from all walks of life, and we enjoyed and appreciated each one of them for who they were. When our daughter Jackie was born, she was very sick in the neonatal intensive care unit. And looking into her incubator with the doctor one morning, he said to me, "Statistically speaking, your marriage has no chance." Without a glance or a thought, I said, "You want to bet?" At that most difficult time, my husband, Jackie's father, stepped up, as I am witness. Byron never stepped back in the face of a problem. So we were into beating odds. It wasn't luck. It was countless hours of figuring it all out. Diseases do separate people. I did not have Byron's disease. We would go to his doctor appointments together, and the doctor would ask if he napped during the day. Byron would say no, and then I would say, yes, he does. Then Byron would say, go find your own disease. This is my disease. When anything for his handicap broke, it was an urgent problem-solving feat, or we had to have a backup. So once Byron's bed that moved up and down broke, and we had another bed that moved up and down that he could use. So I got Byron in bed using the lift with the sling, as I always did, but this time he wanted me to put him up higher in this bed so that the bend would be at the right place. And not realizing how narrow the base was, the bed flipped up with his body weight wedging him and his neck against the wall down low. And I was up high on the other end trying to right the Titanic, you might say. I managed to inch off the bed as the bed inched further into Byron. And I put his BiPAP machine on because he felt like he couldn't breathe and might die. And I called 911. I don't think they'd ever seen anything like this before. They got him back into his chair, and they offered to help him get safely back in bed. They took an ottoman and put it underneath the head of the bed. And so Byron said, oh, no, my wife can get me back in bed. And they're like, I don't think so. So they got him back in bed and were very kind. Once his wheelchair stopped dead when we were on the remote island of Ocracoke, North Carolina, and Byron's friend Tommy, he temporarily fixed the control panel mechanism with a straight pin out of a small sewing kit from the variety store. Afterwards, Tommy told him it's time to replace that 8-year-old wheelchair no matter how attached you are to it. That wasn't the only time that Tommy got Byron out of a bind. I can't bring up binds without bringing up Dr. Matthew Williams, Byron's pulmonologist. There is nothing like a medical bind. And I can tell you there's nothing like Dr. Williams being there to get a patient out of it. Byron would summer it by saying that Dr. Williams knows how to cheat the Grim Reaper. And let me tell you, that's surely what he did in Byron's life. Mo helped Byron when I was working, and then part-time once I retired. Oh, Byron loved Mo in the purest sense. Besides being equally as good at helping him as I was, Mo and I were like a brother and sister, and there were times when Mo would hurry over to help us in a situation. The three of us wrapped our minds around making Byron's life work. Many people did, though Byron more than anybody. One weekend, Byron wanted to smoke meats, chicken, pork, and beef. We happily set out back, and I followed his every direction the whole day. We made this wonderful food, and we had a grand time together. So later that week, I looked at the calendar and realized that day was our anniversary, and we had forgotten it. We were just a food-loving family, and as Jackie said, with Byron not being able to cook, he sure could tell us how to make the food as he would, and he was a wonderful cook. I always told Byron that he was a whole person no matter how much his body let him down. And he always carried on as a whole person in spite of his body letting him down. We were very honest with each other and honest about his disease. And towards the end of his life, he asked me if I was helping him because I had to, and I reminded him what he had always taught me. He said, "No man owns another man." And I was with him because I wanted to be with him. So I asked him, was he there just to help him get from point A to point B every day? And he reminded me, he said, "Oh no, I enjoy your carrying on." So we both carried on, and now he still wants us to carry on, and we will. It's strange being married, knowing how this would end. Me outliving Byron, not sure how or when. We always talked about it, and then sometimes we just tried not to think about it. So now the story's told. I look back on the day that Byron died, and I know he lived until the last day that he could. We thought he would be going home, but his lungs went into respiratory failure early in the morning after I arrived. As I realized he was leaving us, I jumped right on top of him, and I hugged him with all my might because I finally could. Because for a long time he was too fragile. I told Byron everything I'd always said to him, how happy I was the day we met, how I would not have wanted anybody else, how important he was to me, and what a wonderful father he was. And I told him I was so thankful that I had been his wife, or was his wife. And at last I said, "I just want to be sure that you know how much I love you. I love you." As Byron breathed his last breath, he was able to say back to me, "I love you too. I love you too." And then he drifted away peacefully. I lost my husband, and I did not want to. And he lost his life, and he did not want to. We are going to miss out on the next 30 years. I want some of our years back, and I want some of those years ahead of us that we can't have. He valued life and never squandered it. He would never give up on life, and he would not give up on our marriage. He did not want to leave us, and he would have taken life any way it came. I will wonder what we would have become together, but I am thankful still for what we did become together. And I will always honor Byron, and I want to thank everybody here because you know what? You too made Byron's life not about his disease. A friend of mine who's a poetry writer sent this to us from Canada. It's a poem about Byron. She knew him the whole marriage. My friend Callie and I met each other before I met Byron. Byron was a man for all seasons. He climbed mountains we cannot see. He journeyed into dark valleys few survived and faced mighty storms on the most turbulent oceans of fate. And he did all of this with a kind of courage that took my breath away. Maya Angelou writes of the caged bird that still sings, but in Byron's case, the caged bird not only sang, but worked at a career he loved, found joy in family, solace in intellect, and the will to carry on with great humor and a zest for life that few know. He was my hero. At a very young age, Byron was given a life sentence to be trapped in a body in a wheelchair with an illness that would never get better and only worse. And yet, like few men I've ever known, he flew. And in the flying, he taught that the spirit can be filled with fire and light and can soar high above cages and wheelchairs. He soared on those wings of fate like no man I'd ever known. His amazing wife, Jan, was the wind beneath his wings. She was the constant breath of life that loved and cared and not only sang from the cage with him, but opened the doors to the amazing horizons that were still left to travel. The last time I had dinner with Jan and Byron, we sat outside in Clifton on a beautiful sunny day in March. Byron could not move, breathe on his own, or even talk. But he was there with his humor, his spirit, and that zest for life. In the end, it was the fire and light of his tremendous spirit that gave us this man for all seasons, and then took him away on a June day with his wife beside him. Byron as we celebrate your life today, you are finally free to fly, in every sense of the word. I carry with me the memory of your blazing spirit, and you will always be my hero.
This is to my friend Byron, who will live forever in my heart. There are two ways to live our life, for body or for soul. If we live only for our body, then senses are in control and we live for materials which provide joy to our senses. For such people, soul has no meaning and does not exist. For those people who live only for soul, where truth is what we live for, then the body has no meaning, but it has a purpose that is needed to house the soul. People who live for soul live to see themselves in every human being, and need for materials is there only to sustain the body. Senses do not reign in a person who lives for the soul. Every action soul-directed person is guided is from the inner voice, to which some of us call the voice of God. Byron lived his life from his soul. He was the most compassionate, honest, caring, and truthful person I have ever met in my life. He just wanted to make enough money to live a very simple life. He was detached to money. I knew him for 25 years. He did not resend the invoice again if you did not pay him. He assumed that one who did not pay may be going through some hard time. If the person who is not paying him came to him for work, he would not turn it down and neither remind him that he is not receiving payments. From last few years, he was working for the benefit of others, was not motivated by any amount of money coming to him. Last couple of months, he could not breathe without a machine, could not move any part of his body except for some strength in his fingers, could not eat except for liquids, could not talk legibly, but still he kept on working, simply for the good of other people. And he mentioned to me, especially for the contractors who were small, they needed help immediately, and he wanted to be there for them. He never complained about his sickness. I asked him once that people like me come and complain, but I have never heard you complain or even talk about the effect of disease on you. And he narrated me a story. He said when the doctor told him that he is going to be wheelchair bound, he went to meet two people who were on wheelchair. The first one he met was very bitter, and he was frustrated, he was bitter, he was complaining. And then the second one he met, that person was at peace, he was happy, he greeted Byron with a smile and talked to him. And when Byron left, he said, I am going to be like the other person. And he never changed. No matter what he suffered, he never complained. I asked him one time, how come? He said, if you do not mind, it does not matter. He did not mind his disease. He accepted that from day one. And he was a person who was living through the soul. So the body only had the meaning for him to keep his soul in place. Even for those people who discriminated against him at times because he was on wheelchair, he had a compassionate heart for them. Byron was just one of a kind person, so real that it defies all odds. Without ever knowing, he lived the life which Buddha preached. Just live a kind life, devoid of desires. You do not need God. Just like Buddha, he found God in all of us, and helping people was helping his God. If God ever names a saint, then he will be the one, an unknown saint. Byron, you will always be in my thoughts, just waiting to see you again. God does not give everything to one family, and he does not give everything bad to one family. So yes, he gave disease to Byron and sickness to Jackie, but he also gave a very loving family who enjoyed being with him and enjoyed taking care of him because they knew they're in the company of his saint. Thanks.
Well, for those of you that are in construction, I didn't do my activity plan. Sat down to write it, and I just couldn't get there. I think all of you know how special Byron's and my relationship was. Byron wasn't a man that lived with a handicap. Byron was a man that lived. And I got to see some of the best parts of that, and I'll take that with me forever. He did some things for me, and Jan did as a pair, that nothing could ever repay. When my father was in the rehabilitation center, and he was in dire straits, and I called Byron, and he said, you want me to come? And that's who Byron was. Byron and Jan came to the rehabilitation center and spent hours with my father, making my father feel better. And when I couldn't get my mother out of the house in the final stages of her life, nothing was prying her out of that house. I called Byron and Jan and I said, we're going to Anita's. And then I lied a little. I looked at my mom and said, Byron and Jan are going to dinner with us. Didn't lie, they were going to dinner. And that was what got my mom out of her house the last time, to go to dinner with Byron and Jan. That's who Byron and Jan are. They're caring, loving people who do anything for anybody to help make their life better. And then there was a side of Byron that Jan never knew about until after he passed. Some of the things some of you in this room experienced down at Ocracoke when the kids were about to get arrested on the golf cart, and Byron rode up with a cigar in his mouth on his wheelchair and talked the policeman out of arresting him. And Byron loved riding around Ocracoke with a cigar in his mouth in that wheelchair. We put lights on it for him and everything, tail lights. And then in one of our stupider moments when we decided to put him in the ocean in an inner tube. And unfortunately, his body wasn't cooperating, so he needed to get out of the ocean pretty quick, and we weren't having much success. So Jimmy Roberts walked over, and his normal fashion, and he scooped Byron up out of the inner tube, and he set him on we had a ATV, a Yamaha ATV that we had equipped with hand controls, and the Department of Interior gave us a letter so Byron could ride it on the beach and fish in the surf off it. Jimmy picked him up. Jimmy, you're going to kill me for telling this one. And he set him on the four-wheeler, and Byron started screaming. Well, his foot was on the muffler. He had a blister on his foot about like this, and we iced it down, and things calmed down a little, and Byron was riding around on the four-wheeler, and this was typical Byron. He rode up to Jimmy with a perfectly straight face, and he looked at Jimmy and he said, "Jimmy, you burned my foot, and now I can't walk." That was Byron. And, you know, we never let the wheelchair get in the way. We shot machine guns together. We shot together. We shot fireworks together. We camped. I remember one camping trip that, Jan, you would have died if you'd been there. We were on the far side of the lake. It rained for 3 days. The lake flooded. We had to take rocks and plywood and build a little bridge to get the cars out through a ravine. I slid the expedition into the lake. It's sitting there going blub, 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 blub with a camper behind it. And here's Byron in the Blazer with the trailer behind it with the four-wheeler on it. We get out to the ford to go out, 500 feet of water in front of us. And here goes Byron into the water. Water halfway up his doors, spraying in the Blazer through the door cracks. And I'm behind him when he got stuck on a log thinking, what the heck am I going to do? The only thing I could figure is I was going to ram the trailer. But finally he was able to work it off the log. These are the kinds of adventures that Byron lived for. He didn't live with a handicap. He lived. When I wanted to put him in my office up in the hayloft of the barn, and I didn't have a handicap-equipped barn. We're looking around, there's the Bobcat. We pulled the wheelchair into it, strapped him in with motorcycle tie-downs, and up he goes in the Bobcat bucket, full extension. Jan didn't know about all this stuff till a few weeks ago. Byron and I, about a year ago, Byron gave me some guns, and I'm going to wrap up with this because I think it's so Byron. But he gave me some of his guns. He gave me his 8mm Mauser and a couple pistols. And we were riding in the van. Byron and I used to like to ride and talk about politics and women and everything. And I looked at him and I said, I was very sad when he gave me his guns, because those of you that aren't anti-gun know that when a man's guns are, I'd hate to be given a choice of getting rid of the family or getting rid of the guns. And I looked at him and I said, Byron, are you starting to think about death? Why are you giving me your guns? I'm feeling very sad. And he looked at me and he said, Tom, I came to terms with my death years ago. I can't use my guns anymore, and I wanted a friend that could use them to have them. That's about as serious a conversation as you can have with a person. It's soul-bearing. Byron, I love you, and I'm going to miss you, buddy.
boy in that video, or on that slideshow, is the other little boy who's not Byron, actually is Byron. Because Mo married and brought his wife from Sierra Leone, Africa, and he named his son Byron. So I don't think little Byron, baby Byron's here, but we have another little Byron now.
Hi, my name is Mark Price. I'm Byron's little brother. And I looked up to Byron. He was my big brother. He showed me what it was to be a man. And it's not unusual for a little brother to look up to his big brother. What was unusual about Byron and I is that we were separated as children by the tragic death of our father. So for 34 years, I did not see him or have contact with him, or with Randy. And through this miracle of technology that we call the internet, I was able to find Byron through 5 minutes of research on a website and Laura making one phone call. And that one phone call reached Randy, his sister, and this miracle that took place was a whirlwind of love and acceptance that took place quickly. Jan and Byron not only accepted us as family members, but they kind of hit the fast forward button when it came to little brotherhood. So I was engaged quickly in attending soccer games and going on family vacations with them, and being a fisherman all of a sudden. So Byron was, he was a big brother to me. And he looked for me for years before most of us had access to the internet. In other words, I spent 5 minutes on the website, I found him, but he had looked for me for years. And it was very comforting for me to know that somebody was that devoted to finding me. And it was said earlier, that grit, that determination, that was kind of his hallmark, made him a fantastic big brother. So, what came to mind when Byron was speaking about fishing and grit and determination was we went out on a fishing charter with Captain Bunky out of Solomon's, and we got really lucky on that trip because we caught our limit in like an hour. So we had like 24 big, beautiful rockfish that were ready to go to the table to get filleted. And Captain Bunky just started heading back to the marina, and he's like, Byron was like, I chartered this boat for the whole afternoon. We're going fishing. And Captain Bunky said, you caught your limit, dude. You can't catch anymore. And he says, well, take us to some place where there's other fish. And so we went and we found this wreck, and we fished some more. And he made him drive around to all these other spots. And the whole time, the poor guy was kind of seasick. Byron was. But he wanted his little brother and his son to have a good time and to catch fish. So I am so grateful for him. And to all the men in this audience, I encourage you to reach out to someone and be a big brother. Because I am walking, talking proof that it's never too late to be a big brother. And I thank God for mine.
I'm Randy. I'm Brian's little sister, and I've always called him Brian. Brian was the only one who really knew the story of both of us. He knew the whole story. And we lost our father at a very young age. And I still remember the day as it was yesterday, what Brian was wearing, where he was sitting on the couch. And I remember thinking, it's just me. And then I thought, no, Braun's there too. And Braun was a big brother in every sense of the word. And some of the sense, I'll just give you a few stories to give you an idea. Our great-grandmother had a farm in Hillsborough, Missouri, and we used to go down there quite a bit. And Brian would always think of games for us to play, such as, let's play firing squad. And I'd be like, oh, okay, what's that? And he goes, well, let me just tie you to my tree, to this tree, and then let me go get my BB gun. And I'm like, wait, try like this game. And then there was a bull that lived down the dirt road where the mailbox was, and we'd always go get the mail. And one day, Brian decided, hey, let's play Matador. I'm going to give you this red flag. And you go sit on the fence and wave it at the bull. I'm like, I'm not really sure that's a great idea, but okay. So he had several things like that, or he'd let me go fishing with him, but only if I would bait the fish and promise not to say a word, or bait the hook and promise not to say a word. And his sense of humor was legendary, as I'm sure all you guys know, but I had a cat that ran off once, couldn't find him, never came back home, and my brother would call in these various accents and say he worked at a Chinese restaurant and he'd found the cat, or sometimes he would just call and on my answering machine there would be a meow, meow. But he was pretty amazing, and I remember when he came out to visit me in Colorado, and I was so excited to show him the mountains and how beautiful Colorado was, and we were driving up to Aspen through Glenwood Canyon. He was like, oh my gosh, stop the car. And I'm like, well, we're going through a canyon, there's bridge construction, but he wanted me to get out and take pictures of the bridge, because he was just amazed at how gorgeous this bridge was. So took pictures of the bridge. And I'm very privileged to have been his sister. He showed me how to do this muscle disease. My brother, as everyone has said, never complained once. He was always just a text message away, and I would often get text messages, and we were in this together too, in this journey of muscular dystrophy, and it's because of him, he showed me how to do it, and without him here, I hope I can carry on as well as he did. So, Brian, I love you forever.
My name's Josh Lancaster. I'm Byron's nephew. Sorry, my voice is it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Not that I didn't think it was going to be hard, but what an example Byron was. Like I didn't grow up with the greatest dad. Kind of lost him when I was about 18 years old. And then I lost my sister a few years later, or more than a few years later. And I remember one day, I was driving with him. I was driving the van. He was in the car. I think we just got back from a movie. We were heading back from a movie, and I was really down on myself. I was just kind of having a pity party. No one could have it worse than me. Like, this is awful. And he just looked at me and it's like almost like sideways, and I was like, what is wrong with you? You have a beautiful family around you. You're a great person, you know? He's like, I didn't have it great growing up either. I have this muscle disease. I have all these things against me, but that doesn't define who you are. You're not your father's son. You're not your situation's definition. You are who you are. I guess that kind of speaks to the self-reliance. And that memory really sticks out to me. I think it kind of turned me around a little bit. It's like, okay, you know what? Like, if he can do it, and he's so great, and he's so nice, and he's been basically a second father to me. I don't know a world without him. Then why can't, like, I don't have it that bad. I can do this. I was fortunate enough to go on some of the fishing trips that Byron had mentioned, and I remember lifting him into the boat and just thinking, like, it's almost like his handicap wasn't a thing. Like, it wasn't, that was just something that you had to do. It was like, oh, we go fishing, Byron's with us, we lift him up onto the boat. That's just, a part of the trip. And, I hope we all, kind of remember that. And we can all kind of just be a little bit of him. Because I think if we all are, we're all going to be a lot better off. Because I don't know, he should never be forgotten, and not just in the memories that we all have with him, but in how kind of he lived his life. I know that's something I'm never going to forget.
My name's Jeremy. I wrote some stuff down because I'm terrible at this kind of thing. I'm a colleague of Byron's. I worked with him for a long time, 18 years. I worked with Byron. I want to thank you guys, Jackie, Jan, Byron, for having us out here today. I really just kind of wrote some bullet points of things I remembered and things that were important to me. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm just going to kind of read through it. So I have stories of Byron that kind of just warm me up, remind me what things are all about. So some of the moments that I cherish the most is just the light bulbs, lots of light bulbs, just exploding over my head. He taught me about a world of engineering that was just fascinating. I was a young designer and architecture student, and he showed me that there was literally no obstacle that couldn't be overcome with creativity and ingenuity. And I'd never seen anything like that before. He taught me literally no obstacle. And I used that approach with his help for everything, for my entire time as an architect. I remember him being a key player in many of my successes with Fairfax County Building Plan Review. I remember the way he attacked all the weird and hard problems, because I brought him some weird and hard problems, and he always was able to figure them out. I remember stamping plans for him, putting a pen in his hand, and lifting his hand up so he could sign his own name, because he insisted every single time on signing his own name. I even tried. I said, "Hey man, I'll sign that for you." He's like, no, that's not how we do this. I can appreciate the confident and knowledgeable person I have become because of time spent with him. One of my favorites is testing his wheelchair on the new van lift, and the way he laughed, not a belly laugh, but like a pointed laugh at me, as I almost pitched myself over the front of it because I didn't know how to use his wheelchair. And those are sensitive controls, a lot more sensitive than I thought they would be. And I remember him saying, "Well, that's why I had you test it." I cherish the times talking about literally anything in the driveway. I think a lot of us had that experience with him, just hanging out in the driveway, talking about whatever came to his mind. I loved it. I loved spending time with him and just talking to him. I remember a very sassy little girl watching cartoons with me at 7 a.m. while I waited for Byron to get his pants on. Because I showed up at 7 a.m. every time. I was never late. He said, "Sure, come by at 7. I said, "Okay." And every time he was never ready. So we'd just hang out. And I loved it. I loved hanging out with Jackie. I loved hanging out with Jan. Byron was always asleep. I remember the joy that he would show me as Jackie grew strong and became independent. He just loved it. He loved her so much. And he was an example in that way. He was so filled with pride when he'd talk about the amazing things that Byron Jr. was doing. It just, the Vanderbilt stuff, and he literally never stopped talking about it. "Hey man, I'm here to do work." "Yeah, but listen to what my son's doing." "Okay, let's do that too." It was amazing. It really was amazing to be a part of that. The devotion to Jan was a huge example, and really something to be modeled. I don't know how to do it the way he did it. I try. Hopefully my wife agrees a little bit. One of the things that I always thought was funny is that I think Jan thinks that I'm a better person than I actually am, so I appreciate that. Also sitting with Jan, who always had her own unique and always still has her own unique take on life in the world. Still one of my favorite things. Jan's trust in me and Byron's trust in me. Very, very cherished. I consider myself fortunate for a couple of reasons. First of which is, having known Byron for 18 years and being able to consider him a friend. The second is making it to 45 years and never having lost anybody important in my life. Byron is the first person that had profound impact on my life that's gone. I didn't realize that I wasn't really prepared for that. Turns out I'm kind of unable to process my emotions around it. I never seriously considered this outcome to his disease because it wasn't a thing we talked about. It wasn't a thing we even considered. It wasn't a part of our relationship. I counted on the fact that he would always be there when I needed him, and I feel like I kind of took our relationship for granted because of that. There was no sign ever that there was an end. I'd like to think that I was there for him when he needed me, but I'm not sure. We never really talked about it. I know that it hurts. I know that I hurt for Jan, Byron, and Jackie's loss. So what I've been doing to deal with it in my own way is just processing a list of words that kind of describes his contribution to my life. I put them in order, I rearrange them again. I just think about them. These words in the final order for today: self-made, motivated, businessman, kind, passionate, dedicated, structural support, calculated, patient mentor, stamping approval, rolling, laughing friend. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is not something I have ever done, so just understand. My name is Mo, a name which everybody gets to know here, but I'm Mohammed. I came from one of the West African countries. I was one of the few people that are lucky to be here in the United States 2 weeks before 9/11. And being named Mohammed, it sends a lot of signals to so many people. So I came with a tourist visa in the US to donate a kidney to one of my family members, which I did successfully. After the transplant, I decided to seek asylum in the US and I was approved. And after that, I started working. I was working for a healthcare company that sent healthcare workers to homes. So I was lucky to be sent to the Price family's home when Jane was out of town. I worked for this company that called me and gave me the address to Mr. Price. I went there, Jane was out of town, and I met Byron in bed. By then, Jackie and Byron were all in high school. So the first day, I helped Mr. Price get out of bed, dress, and we walked to the dining room area. What he asked me was, "What do you want to eat?" I'm here to work. I'm okay. He said, "Okay, help me with breakfast." I helped him with breakfast. And as he was eating, he still asked, what I want to eat. So he kept asking, do you want this, you want this? And he did measure. One of his family said about meat. And being from an African country, we eat meat occasionally because it's not everybody can afford meat. So here I am, somebody offered me meat. Sure, I want some. So he went around the kitchen area, opened the freezers, and took out steak. I can imagine somebody in a wheelchair. He was just trying to make me like at home, happy. So he took out the steak, put it in the oven, and do whatever it was. And we sit together and eat. He was just asking me questions. So I was there for like 2 hours. I left after helping him. And come another time he needs help. He asked the company that I was working with to send me to his house. I went to the house, helped him with the same routine, and he asked me, he said, how much do you get paid with this company? To myself, I said, do you want to get me in trouble? So I would tell him, he would call the company that I work with, but that was not what it was really. So he asked me, okay, do you really have papers to work in the US? He said, even if you're not, I'm going to give you a job. I said, yes, sir, I do have papers to work. He said, the reason why I'm asking, I have a lady helping me. She's going to get married, and she might be relocating somewhere else, and I need someone to help me. I said, okay. So I end up helping him in his house, working in the office, helping him with his routine and all that. So being with him at that time, Jane was still working. Jane and Jackie and Byron are still in school, so I go to the house like 3 days a week from 9 to 2. There was a time he was going to go visit West Virginia to Tommy's farm. He asked Jane to go with him. And Jane told him, he said, even if you rented the best hotel in West Virginia, I'm not going to go with you. I said, okay, Mohammed, could you go with me? I said, sure, I will. Then we make up the plan to go to West Virginia. Jane is not going to go with us. On our way to West Virginia, he said, okay, Mohammed, I know you are Mohammed. We are going to West Virginia. The people that we are going to meet, they don't know you. I know you. But for some reason, me, Mohammed, and we all know sometimes we get misunderstood by our backgrounds, names, and you name the rest. So we are going to go meet Tommy. So let me let you know how I got the name Mo. We drove on our way to West Virginia. He said, pull up. I pulled on the side of the road. I said, Mohammed, the people that we're going to go meet, you don't know them. I know them. I have worked with them. But this is what I'm going to call you when we get there. He said, okay. Say, I'm going to call you Mo. And so you don't look like you're Mohammed. You are from any of those countries that we have concerns about. I said, okay, that's fine. So he kept calling me Mo. We get here, I met Tommy, and that was the first time, Tommy, if you ever remember, me and Byron always come up to your farm. It's because Jane said, no, he's not. So,
So Byron told me how this conversation went. He said, I'm going to take you up to West Virginia to a camp in the mountains that's nowhere near anywhere with a bunch of rednecks that have guns.
So since then, Byron has been calling me Mo, and he did emphasize. He said, okay, I know, we like asking questions. If anybody asks you what Mo means, say, tell them you are Maurice. So this is how I got the name Mo. Most people that work with Byron today only know Mo, and that's how I've been called. Even his family call me Mo. I have people from my country now back in Sierra Leone that calls me Mo. Yeah, he has a very good reason to it. I mean, he was all just trying to protect me, and feel like, this is how we are. We ask so many questions, and sometimes we feel different about people. But again, having the time to work with Byron is something I really happy about, because I learned a lesson from being around him. What I learned from Byron is that, as you all see me walk up here, I'm limping. Feel like doing what I do is something that I like. I want to work with people who I feel like we are in the same, So Byron encouraged me so much about being a loving person, which he loved. He loved, care, and respect people. Whatever little thing you do for him, he always want to pay you. He don't like to be getting free service. There's two things I remember. One time, when I was working with him, I have a very old car. His wife, himself, and me, we decided to get a car. It was one afternoon. He said, okay, Mo, let's go get a car for you. Let's go out and shop for a car. So we started from a Honda dealership on Lee Highway, somewhere. Yeah. We went there. It was a very sunny day. With this wheelchair, we left. We went to Manassas. Went to all those dealerships around Manassas area. And we get to the Honda dealership in Manassas. We went there and talked to a gentleman who was able to help us get a car that I'm using right now. And he said, Mo, when I was trying to buy my first car, I have $100 down payment. You are better than me. You have a $2,000 down payment. So this is how it is. So I got a car that I'm using up to today. Come to the time Josh was getting married, I drove him from his house to where the wedding was in Maryland. This is just about how Byron feels about other people. We went there, it was a raining day, if you all could remember. His wheelchair could not get access to the church. I was standing at the entrance of the church with an umbrella with him. And we were there after the wedding. We went to the reception area. It was a whole lot of people, and we were there in the evening. I walked up to him. I said, Byron, I said, it seems like I'm the only African person here. He said, no, Mo, don't worry about it. Just feel okay. So we were there till the evening. There comes a lady with either her boyfriend or somebody, an African lady, it's black for me. And he walked up to me and said, Mo, how do you feel? I said, there's somebody here who's just like you. Then I said, look around and see. And I look around. I see nothing. He said, no. I said, well, you were concerned you being the only person here who is black. I said, well, if you look around, I am the only person in a wheelchair here right now. So you are more than myself. This is the kind of person Byron be. He was really, as his wife stated, we were very more attached. He told me, you are my 911. Sometimes when Jane travels, I'll be at work. I said, Mo, if I need help, can I call you? I said, yes. He said, but you'll be at work. I said, just call me, I'll come. And if he needs that, he'll come. I'll do all it takes me to get here. There's one thing I believe. If someone knock at your door, he believe you will open. And that was how the Price family are. What I learned about them is that they have said so much good things as you heard about me. To even people that I even never get to meet. And sometimes as I walked in here, I met a lady in the entrance, said, are you Mo? It's because how myself and them have been all these years. I appreciate you all. And I'll continue to do what I do to help other people that really need the help that I give out. I really appreciate that so much. You know, and I believe Byron has gone, but has left a whole lot of things that are very good that he used to do. That's love, care, and respect. Byron worked his whole life that I know him. I could remember when he was in the hospital, a few days before I left to Africa. He can talk. Jane and myself can really understand what his lips saying. You know, he has this phone call. He was in the hospital. He has this phone call from Scott. Scott was doing something, and whatever he was doing, he needed the help of Byron. This is what I enjoy about this man. You know, when I say he worked his whole life, Byron can be in his van, he still work. He can be in the shower room, he still work. He can be in the bed, he still work. He will tell me, Mo, somebody's gonna come with some plants, stamp them, date them, and bring them. He will be on the commode. He will sign. This is the kind of man. So he just motivates me. Being the kind of person he was, he still reach out to people. If he can't help you in his office, he can help you through the phone. He has some other ways around that he does to help other people, which I admire him so much. He's a happy man. He's now where he is. You know, one time he asked me, Jane, the husband was very more concerned about you. He said, Mo, if I died, no, sorry, if something happened to Jane, will he come and stay with me? I said, why are you saying that? He said, no, I'm just making plans. I said, okay, I mean, I don't think anything gonna happen. But absolutely doing what I do with people like Byron, Byron was able to live the life that he lived because of the family that he had. We are loving, supporting, and caring family. You know, and since he died, I was in Africa. When I came back, what is in me is that places that we used to go, roads that we used to drive, offices that we used to go to. If I drive past here, it always reminds me of Byron. I still do what I do. If I have to use a royal lift to help someone get in and out of bed, it reminds me of him. I saw someone in a wheelchair, it reminds me of Byron. It's a very difficult thing to just go away easily. You know, most of the places I have been, some of the people that I have met, I met them because of Byron, like Tommy, West Virginia, Ocracoke, so many other places within Fairfax County. And this is the place that I always drive by. So there's nothing, or there's no day in my life that I have to go somewhere within Fairfax, Alexandria, or Virginia as a whole, that I don't ever remember being there with Byron. And he is so kind, his family is so kind that as you all see the video, there's a little boy with American flag t-shirt, that's my son. When I came here, I settled down, I was trying to get my wife, they supported me. She came and she became pregnant. We're gonna have a baby. I mean, the hospital told us that we're gonna have a girl. I said, with all the good things that I have got from you, I want to give it back to you, for you guys to know I really appreciate being with you. I said, if my baby is going to be a girl, I'm going to name the baby Jane Price. Jane. And we went to the hospital. My wife was 8 months pregnant. We're not expecting to have a baby by then. Still hoping to get a boy. We went there, a girl. We went there. My son was born when he was 8 months. And it was a boy. I said, well, that's a good thing. Now that it was not a girl, it's going to be a boy, so I'm going to name my son Byron. So this is just for the family and friends that know Byron. That's I really want to give back to them the bond, respect that we all have. When he was, now he's gone. It's still gonna be between myself and his family and the people that he work with. Thank you all, and this is Mo, and this is how I got the name Mo. Thank you.
I think we did have one more person who's going to speak, but it's a little late, so I don't want to hold you guys hostage. So Melanie's, my mom's friend Melanie has been playing the music, and she's going to play one more piece, and that's it. So thank everyone. Thank you for coming. If you had something else to say that you didn't get a chance to say, please post it to that Facebook group that we made. We were hoping to see similar stuff like that, little tributes and stuff on that page. So if you didn't get a chance to say it here, that would, our family would really appreciate that. And thanks again for coming.